Hi everyone. Now let's discuss topic 5 of Unit 3, Vulnerability Assessment. Vulnerability assessment is a systematic process used in cybersecurity to identify, classify, and prioritize security weaknesses, vulnerabilities in systems, networks, and applications. Its main goal is to detect flaws before attackers exploit them. In simple words, it's like doing a health checkup of a computer system to find weak spots, like outdated software, open ports, or weak passwords, and fix them before hackers take advantage. Vulnerability assessment is often confused with penetration testing, but there's a difference. Vulnerability assessment finds the weaknesses, while penetration testing actively exploits them to test defenses. An important concept here is CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System, which is a standard method to rate the severity of vulnerabilities on a scale from 0, none, to 10, critical. To make this clear, let's look at some exam-focused questions. 2-mark questions. Define vulnerability assessment. List any 2 goals of vulnerability assessment. Differentiate between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. Give 2 examples of common vulnerabilities in web applications. What is CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System? 10-mark questions. Explain the steps involved in the vulnerability assessment process. Discuss the different types of vulnerability assessments with examples. Explain the role of automated tools in vulnerability assessment. Write short notes on CVSS and its importance. Describe common vulnerability categories in networks, systems, and applications. Introduction to Vulnerability Assessment, VA. Vulnerability Assessment, VA, is a systematic process used by organizations to find and fix weaknesses in their IT systems, applications, and processes. These weaknesses are called vulnerabilities, and they could be anything from outdated software, weak passwords, open network ports, or misconfigured firewalls. If attackers find these issues before the organization does, they could exploit them to steal data, install malware, or take control of systems. By performing a vulnerability assessment, organizations can discover these security gaps early and take action before they are misused. Example: imagine you have a house with several windows and doors. If you leave one window unlocked, it becomes an easy entry point for burglars. A vulnerability assessment is like checking every door and window in your house to ensure they are locked and secure. Objectives of vulnerability assessment: identify security weaknesses. The primary goal of VA is to detect vulnerabilities in systems, applications, and networks. These could include unpatched operating systems, insecure coding and applications, or improperly configured servers. Example: a web application with an outdated login system might allow attackers to perform SQL injection and gain access to sensitive data. Prioritize vulnerabilities based on severity. Not all vulnerabilities have the same impact. Some are low risk, like minor misconfigurations, while others are high risk, like a critical flaw in an online payment gateway. VA tools often give a severity score so that organizations know which issues need immediate attention. Example: if a system has 50 vulnerabilities, but one of them allows full system control, that issue must be fixed first. Reduce the attack surface. The attack surface is the total number of possible entry points an attacker can exploit. By identifying and fixing vulnerabilities, organizations reduce these entry points, making it harder for attackers to succeed. Example: closing unused network ports or disabling unnecessary services reduces the number of doors available for attackers. Ensure compliance with security regulations. Many industries have strict laws and standards, such as GDPR, PCI-DSS, for payment card data, and HIPAA for healthcare data. Vulnerability assessments help organizations remain compliant by proving that they are regularly testing and securing their systems. Example: a bank must conduct regular vulnerability scans to ensure customer data is safe and to comply with financial regulations. Support risk management and incident prevention. VA is an essential part of risk management. By identifying vulnerabilities early, organizations can fix them before they turn into incidents. This proactive approach saves time, money, and reputation. Example: if a hospital finds a vulnerability in its patient database and fixes it before hackers exploit it, They prevent a potential data breach that could harm patients and damage trust. Types of vulnerability assessments. Vulnerability assessment, VA, can be performed at different layers of IT infrastructure, depending on what needs to be secured. Each type focuses on a specific area where attackers may exploit weaknesses. 1. Network-based vulnerability assessment. This type focuses on identifying weaknesses in the organization's network infrastructure. It checks for issues such as open ports, weak firewall rules, unnecessary services running, and misconfigured routers or switches. Example, imagine a company leaves port 21, FTP, open on its server without proper security. An attacker could use this to steal files. A network-based VA tool like Nmap can scan the network to detect such open ports and highlight the risks. 2. Host-based vulnerability assessment. This type assesses individual endpoints or servers. It looks at the operating system, OS, installed software, and patch levels to identify weaknesses. Common issues include outdated patches, weak user permissions, or misconfigured security settings. Example, a Windows server running without the latest security updates may have vulnerabilities that hackers can exploit. Tools like Nessus can detect missing updates or weak configurations. 3. Application-based vulnerability assessment. Applications, especially web applications, are a major target for hackers. This assessment focuses on finding flaws in software applications, such as SQL injection, cross-site scripting, XSS, insecure APIs, and poor session management. Example, an e-commerce website that doesn't validate user input could be vulnerable to SQL injection, where attackers steal customer data from the database. Tools like OWASP Zap or Burp Suite can test web apps for these vulnerabilities. 4. Database vulnerability assessment. Databases often store critical business and customer information. A database VA checks for weak credentials, unpatched database software, and insecure configurations. Example, a database using the default username, admin, and password 1234 can be easily hacked. Tools like Scuba by Imperva are used to scan databases and detect such issues. 5. Wireless network vulnerability assessment. This assessment focuses on wireless networks, Wi-Fi, within an organization. It detects rogue access points, weak encryption standards like WEP, and insecure configurations that attackers can exploit to intercept communication. Example, if an office Wi-Fi is still using outdated WEP encryption, hackers can easily crack the password and gain access. A wireless VA tool can identify such insecure Wi-Fi settings. 6. Cloud vulnerability assessment. With more businesses moving to the cloud, this assessment ensures cloud environments, AWS, Azure, GCP, are secure. It checks for misconfigured storage buckets, exposed services, weak authentication, and lack of encryption. Example, a company using AWS S3 may accidentally make its storage bucket public, allowing anyone to access confidential files. Cloud VA tools help identify and fix such misconfigurations. Vulnerability assessment process. The vulnerability assessment process is a structured method used to identify, analyze, and fix security weaknesses in systems, applications, and networks. It ensures that organizations can detect risks before attackers exploit them. This process involves several important steps, each with its own purpose and examples. 1. Planning and scope definition. The first step in vulnerability assessment is planning and defining the scope. Here, the security team decides which assets need to be assessed, such as servers, applications, or databases, and sets clear boundaries for testing. This prevents unnecessary scanning of systems that are not part of the organization. For example, a bank may choose to scan only its online banking servers and exclude employee personal devices. This step ensures the assessment is focused and well-organized. 2. Scanning and discovery. Once the scope is defined, the next step is scanning and discovery, where automated tools are used to detect vulnerabilities in the target systems. These tools search for weak points like open ports, outdated software, or insecure configurations. For example, using Nmap to identify open ports or Nessus to scan for outdated patches on Windows servers. This step provides the initial list of possible weaknesses. 3. Analysis and validation. Not every detected issue is a real threat. In the analysis and validation stage, security experts carefully review the scan results to confirm which vulnerabilities are genuine and which are false positives. This prevents wasting time on irrelevant issues. For instance, if a scanner reports that a service is vulnerable, the security team may cross-check it manually or by consulting vendor documentation before confirming it as a true vulnerability. 4. Risk rating. After validation, each vulnerability is given a risk rating based on its severity and potential impact. A common method for this is the CVSS, Common Vulnerability Scoring System, which assigns a score from 0, low risk, to 10, critical. For example, an SQL injection flaw in an online shopping website may be rated as high risk because attackers could steal customer credit card details, whereas an outdated internal printer driver might be considered low risk. This step helps organizations prioritize which issues to fix first. 5. Reporting. The next step is reporting, where all the findings are documented in a clear and structured report. The report usually includes details of each vulnerability, its risk score, affected assets, and recommended remediation steps. For example, a report might state, the company website is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, XSS. Risk score, 7.5 high. Recommendation, implement input validation and escaping. A well-prepared report ensures both technical teams and management can understand the risks. 6. Remediation and verification. The final step is remediation and verification. In this stage, the organization fixes the vulnerabilities by applying security patches, updating configurations, or strengthening access controls. After the fixes are applied, the system is retested to ensure the vulnerabilities are properly resolved. For example, if a web server was missing security patches, the IT team installs the updates and then runs the scan again to confirm the issue is no longer present. Tools for vulnerability assessment. When organizations perform a vulnerability assessment, VA, they use special tools that help them automatically detect weaknesses in their systems. Some commonly used tools are Nessus. This is one of the most widely used commercial tools. It can scan networks, operating systems, and applications for missing patches, misconfigurations, and known vulnerabilities. Example, if a Windows server has not been updated with the latest security patch, Nessus will detect it and report the missing update. OpenVAS. This is a free and open-source vulnerability scanner. It works similarly to Nessus, but is often used in academic or budget-conscious organizations. Example, a small company can use OpenVAS to check if their Linux servers are exposed to known exploits. QualisGuard. This is a cloud-based vulnerability management tool. Unlike Nessus and OpenVAS, it doesn't need to be installed locally. It scans systems over the internet. Example, a company using Amazon Web Services, AWS, can use QualisGuard to scan their cloud-hosted servers for risks. Nikto. This is a lightweight tool that focuses specifically on web servers. It detects misconfigurations, dangerous files, and outdated server software. Example, if a web server is still running Apache version with known bugs, Nikto will flag it. OWASP ZAP, Z Attack Proxy. This tool is mainly used for web application security testing. It checks for issues like SQL injection, cross-site scripting XSS, and insecure APIs. Example, if a login form is vulnerable to SQL injection, OWASP ZAP will alert the tester. These tools are like security scanners that continuously monitor networks, applications, and databases to detect risks before attackers can exploit them. Vulnerability categories. Vulnerabilities can be grouped into different categories depending on the type of weakness. Some common categories are configuration vulnerabilities. These occur when systems are set up incorrectly. Example, using weak or default passwords like admin123 on a router, or leaving a database accessible without authentication. Patch management issues. When software is not updated regularly, attackers can exploit old flaws. Example, a hospital still using Windows 7 without updates may be attacked using the WannaCry ransomware exploit. Access control flaws. These happen when users are given more permissions than necessary. Example, A normal employee account having admin access to sensitive files increases the risk if the account is hacked. Application vulnerabilities. These are weaknesses in web or mobile applications. Example: an online shopping website vulnerable to SQL injection could allow attackers to steal customer data. Network vulnerabilities. These are weaknesses in the network infrastructure. Example: open ports on a company firewall or using weak encryption protocols like WEP and Wi-Fi, which hackers can easily break. Please have a look at vulnerability assessment versus penetration testing. Common Vulnerability Scoring System, CVSS. The Common Vulnerability Scoring System, CVSS, is a standardized framework used to measure and communicate the severity of security vulnerabilities in computer systems, applications, and networks. It gives every vulnerability a numerical score ranging from 0.0 to 10.0, which helps security teams decide how urgently a weakness should be fixed. The scoring is based on three main factors: exploitability, how easy it is for an attacker to use the vulnerability; impact, how badly the system will be affected if exploited; and scope, whether the attack affects only one system or spreads to others. The CVSS score ranges are divided into categories. 0.0 is none, no impact. For example, a logging issue that does not affect security. 0.1, 3.9 is low, minor vulnerabilities that have little risk. Example: a system that discloses the version number of its software but does not expose sensitive data. 4.0. 6.9 is medium, moderate risks that may require attention but are not immediately dangerous. Example: a website that uses outdated software with limited exposure to the internet. 7.0. 8.9 is high, serious vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit with significant impact. Example: an SQL injection vulnerability that could expose confidential data. 9.0. 10.0 is critical, extremely severe flaws that can be easily exploited and cause major damage. Example: a remote code execution vulnerability that allows an attacker to take complete control of a server without authentication. Importance of CVSS in cybersecurity. CVSS plays a critical role in cybersecurity because it gives organizations a clear and objective way to prioritize their vulnerability management. Instead of treating all issues equally, companies can focus on fixing the highest-risk vulnerabilities first, reducing the chance of cyber attacks. For example, if a system has both a weak password warning, low severity, and a critical remote code execution flaw, critical severity, CVSS helps prioritize fixing the critical flaw immediately. It also helps organizations comply with cybersecurity regulations and standards like ISO 27001, PCI DSS, and HIPAA, which require regular vulnerability assessments and remediation. By following CVSS scoring, companies can show auditors that they are addressing vulnerabilities systematically. Another major advantage is that CVSS reduces downtime and breach costs. For example, if a bank ignores a CVSS 9.8 vulnerability in its online banking system, it could be hacked, leading to millions in losses. But if the vulnerability is patched quickly, the organization avoids both downtime and financial damage. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe.